5 years ago, when we thought about social media companies, advertising was the way that we expected them to make money, and we figured it was about advertising needing to catch up to them. And here we sit with 3 social media companies, none of which derive their primary revenue at this point from advertising. So to the extent that really the advertising dollars right at this point are going into building the infrastructure instead of going to the sites, what does that mean to you? Does it matter to you? Are you interested in figuring out how important is Irwin's money to you ultimately?
Never thought I'd say this, but I'll let Mark Pincus get a word in.
That's a tee up.
Yeah, that was a tee up.
My take on it is I think that we're at the beginning of this third generation of the internet from a consumer service and business plan standpoint. And it's just getting started, and I think that social media is a key part of it. So it's just emerging. I believe that advertising will be an important part of the business model, but it's going to be invented, and that's great. I think that Google showed us that internet ads could stand on their own, that the pay-per-click model could actually be rationalized for a media buyer for some kinds of ads. But then the display ads didn't really work. Like, oh, well, it should be part of my budget, but why? It wasn't like I had to do it if I was a media buyer. What we can do now is actually, and I think Facebook and I think what we're doing with virtual goods is giving us the first opportunity to have measurable media have an impact on a brand. And I'll just give you 2 examples from us. This week, we're running a program on Farmville for a division of General Mills that is trying to get notoriety for their organic blueberries. So we offered a General Mills sponsored organic Cascadian organic blueberry crop, and in the first couple days 1.2 million people planted it, 330 million crops. So I believe that's a scalable, measurable way that they can see people interacting with their brand. The second thing is
wait, before we leave that, okay,
we'll pay by the people, we won't pay by the crop.
Oh, come on.
It's PPC.
It depends on how it converts in the store.
How about by the blueberry, right?
I would like that.
So how did that originate? I mean, was that an idea that you piloted? Did they come to you? Is this stuff hard to sell, or is it you couldn't sell enough of it?
That's a great question. It's not scalable and repeatable yet. It's at the if you think about the phases, the first is like R&D. Is this valuable? I think we're checking that box, and I think we can give you lots of examples. The second is, can we drive scale? It's great it works in the lab, but can we drive large numbers of consumers? And I think we're checking that box. The third, is it a repeatable purchase that can go into next quarter's budget, repeatable against all these products? We're not there yet.
Got it.
I think, Jessi, the answer is it's most definitely important. It's also most definitely valuable. But again, it really depends on the environment in which the advertising is taking place. And with regard to the third wave that Mark was talking about, one of the patterns we're seeing is that the advertising is flowing out from the core of these businesses. So with Dick's business, that's real time, that's word of mouth, that's resonance. With Mark, it's more of the virtual goods. With LinkedIn, by way of example, there's a recruitment ecosystem that takes place. Mark and I were just talking before we got on stage about how wonderful the technologists and the product people are at Zynga, but not necessarily discussed broadly outside of the business model or some of the amazing growth that they're seeing in terms of members. He can take advantage of LinkedIn and actually market to our professional members that it's a wonderful place to work. That's unique to our environment. That flows from the fact we're about connecting talent with opportunity. That's our core business. And so that's the difference. Whereas 5-10 years ago, the core business for a lot of these consumer websites was display advertising.
Right.
Yeah. The nature of the commercial message is going to look quite different also.
Yeah.
It's not going to look like a display ad. It's going to provide functionality and a different kind of interface for the user to act on something.
Totally agree with that.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
because people in that social context don't want to be interrupted. They want to continue to be engaged, and they want a functionality that eases a task that they're about to engage in.
Or if you're going to interrupt me, it better be for something that I find valuable.
It has to be relevant to you.
Yeah, we just ran this program with 7-Eleven nationwide where they offered redemption codes on 30 7-Eleven products that were co-branded with our games. And they could, if you bought a Slurpee, you could get Mafia Wars, free reward points. And it was the most successful co-marketing program they've ever run. And it was the highest, they had 3 million redemptions in 6 weeks, the highest increase in same-store sales from any co-marketing they've done. I think that's scalable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll give another example to Irwin's point that it won't just be display ads anymore. It's no secret, at least it's no secret in Hollywood, that Twitter opens and closes movies now. Movies can't get through the opening weekend by putting out BS ads that say a movie's a comedy, and it turns out to be a tragedy because Friday night people come out of the theater and say, it's not a comedy, it's a movie about a guy with cancer. And then the movie falls off the rails on Saturday and Sunday. So one of the things we've seen with the studios, just as an example, is as they've started advertising with us on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in advance of people going to see movies on Friday, those advertisements are increasing the volume of the conversation around those movies by like 5 to 6x. Not, 50%, 5 to 6x, right? For one of the films, the number of retweets on the ad, so that's a very specific social gesture. A retweet is a strong social gesture. I want to take this thing you just showed me and show it to everyone who follows me.
And we use it as a point of research.
Right.
Right?
So on their paid promoted tweet, right, on their ad, it ranks number 9 in the all-time list of retweets, tweets that were retweeted. Right? So the number 9 most retweeted tweet ever is a paid tweet. Right? So I just think that brands are starting to realize that if this is where the conversation is happening, irrespective of the sentiment analysis, which they all used to want to do, right? But 2 years ago, if you had talked about, well, you should be advertising in this conversation, they would have said, well, we got to wait and measure the conversation and see whether it's good or bad. The fact of the matter is that proves to be remarkably difficult to do, especially in a platform like Twitter, where people use sarcasm 90% of the time, right? And they'll say things like, I'm totally not going to see Toy Story 3 again tomorrow, which is a good tweet, but it would be seen as bad, right? So anyway, so brands are realizing that, and they realize they have to be there participating in that when it happens.